I feel like hey, it's Wednesday evening, we're here. All of a sudden I got the thumbs up, we're live. I'm glad I wasn't talking bad about anybody.
This time.
Huh?
Yet. This time.
This time, yes. This time. I hope you're doing well. Hope all is going well. I'm glad to be together with everybody, that's for sure. It seems like it's been a long time since Sunday. So we're picking up in our journey through the book of Ruth. And we left off about 2/3 of the way through chapter 1. Now remember, Ruth and Naomi have returned back to Bethlehem, or they were on their way to return to Bethlehem. And we talked last time we were together about this incredible declaration of loyalty, this incredible declaration and this real deep commitment that Ruth expressed to Naomi. While this book is titled the Book of Ruth, I mean she's definitely a key character in here, but it's really from Naomi's perspective. Just about everything that happens in here is from Naomi's perspective, or at least she has her hand in. So you need to remember that too. Anyway, Ruth in verses 16 and 17 made this incredible commitment. And I think one of the questions I asked, or we ended talking about, I don't remember how deep we got into it, was, is Ruth, by this commitment to Naomi, putting herself at risk?
Probably.
Yeah.
She was very dedicated.
Because she's a Moabite.
Well, yeah, that's a big part of it. Yeah, she's going to, and she's really going to be an outcast, isn't she? Mm-hmm. She's a foreigner. Mm-hmm. And as we've talked about, the Moabites were enemies of the Israelites. So she's putting herself into a circumstance or a situation where people are going to already have something against her.
She must have a lot of faith that she's going into something good instead of leaving everything she knows behind.
Yeah.
Well, I don't think she really, well, of course she cared, but in a sense, I don't think she cared as much as she just loved her mother-in-law and just wanted to be there for her. I mean, she didn't have anybody at that point, you know.
Do you think it was just Naomi that she loved?
Naomi,
well, maybe her God, you know.
Well, because think about this. She'd been a daughter-in-law for about 10 years.
Yeah.
So she'd seen Naomi's faith lived out day in and day out. She'd seen Naomi's faith lived out when Naomi was a foreigner.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and she said, your God will be my God.
Yeah. Don't plead with me to abandon you or to return and not follow you. For wherever you go, I will go. Wherever you live, I will live. Everybody's going, oh, that's so awesome. Your people will be my people. Oh, wow, that's a commitment. But here's the thing. And your God will be my God. So she is saying, you know what? My faith takes a back seat to what I've seen, to what I've experienced in this relationship with you. So I don't think it's just a commitment or an expression of loyalty to Naomi. It's an expression of loyalty to God himself.
Yeah.
And so that doesn't make it that she doesn't care. That just makes her very decisive in knowing that this is the path that she should take. God uses, here's the interesting thing. And I think it's something that really kind of talks about, it's one of those underlying or background themes throughout these 4 chapters, is God uses imperfect circumstances and imperfect people to bring everybody to him. Mm-hmm. See, we so often think that we gotta be exactly right, or we've got to be so holy or so set apart or so different to communicate the message of God's love. Naomi and Elimelech and the kids were living in Moab. They'd left everything they knew. You don't think that there was struggles? You don't think there was some family arguments? You don't think that there was some days where Elimelech had to sleep on the couch. I know, it was probably a rock couch too, so that probably wasn't all that comfortable, you know. But what Ruth saw is this deep, deep faith, this deep commitment that at least Naomi had. We don't know about Elimelech. We don't know about Mahlon or Chilion, or Kilion, says some people pronounce it different ways. We don't know about their commitment. What we know, because they're gone. But Ruth has seen this in Naomi, and it's been a message that's caused her to think different about who she trusted, what God she trusted, where she was going to place her faith, what she was going to believe in. So, yeah, loyalty is, big loyalty, right?
Yeah.
Big loyalty on all fronts.
You don't really know when Elimelech decided to leave and go to Moab, and
What was during the famine?
Well, obviously, but
that put so much strain on, that would have put so much strain on her going there. And then I guess I've kind of wondered in some things that I've been through this last week, how was she feeling at that time about her husband that had died? Did she feel like, wait, I'm here, I didn't necessarily want to go, I'm stranded?
Well, we're going to find out in just a second how she felt about her husband that died, how she felt about everything.
Yeah, because...
Okay, but here's the thing. Here's the thing right now, and this is where we left off. It's Naomi saw Ruth's commitment, and she stopped trying to talk her out of it. She was trying to say, go back to what you know, go back. I think that there was probably a little bit of regret in Naomi for leaving. And I don't know how all the history was back then, but I know back in that time primarily, the man called the shots.
Yes.
There wasn't a sit down around the table and say, hey, let's talk about this decision. No, the man said, we're going over here, and everybody packed up their stuff and went. The wife and the kids and everything else. So I don't know that Naomi was considered even in the move, but again, what you see in this is she lived out her faith no matter what the circumstance, and it caused her to build two incredible relationships. One with Orpah, but Orpah went back to what she knew. She made a choice. Okay? And Ruth was so committed to Naomi, but she was also committed, I believe, to the Lord God. So verse 18 says, when Naomi saw Ruth was determined to go with her, she stopped talking to her. Okay, well, if she won't listen to me, then I'm not going to say a thing to her. How childish can we be sometimes? So the two of them traveled. In verse 19 it says this, the two of them traveled until they came to Bethlehem. When they entered Bethlehem, the whole town was excited about their arrival, and the local women explained, can this be Naomi? What does that tell you right there?
She was well liked.
She well known. She was well liked. She'd been gone for 10 years, at least 10 years, probably longer.
But maybe she changed a lot too from the death of her husband or death of her sons. I mean, she might have looked, withered and just.
But still, doesn't it tell you that they were looking for her?
No. I think she had faithfulness before she even left.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Doesn't it tell you the people that she left felt a lacking, so they were looking for her?
They were glad she was going back.
And they were glad that things, they didn't know the circumstance. All they see is Naomi, and they see this woman that they don't know. Yeah. Now, when they left, they would have known that the whole family left. Maybe the word got back that Elimelech had died. Maybe the word got back that the boys had died. Don't know. Don't know that. But Naomi comes back to town, and they're saying, can this be Naomi? And it's not just, people talk.
No.
Yeah.
No.
People talk. You know? Somebody shows up here in the park and that we haven't seen in a long time, and all of a sudden, did you see that so-and-so's back there? They talk.
Oh, yeah.
But the question becomes, because we touched on this already, what are you bringing with you as you're coming back? Now, they probably knew that Naomi was faithful and those kind of things, but maybe there had been some things that were weighing on her. And what's she bringing right now? Because maybe they're seeing something that's different. And we're going to find out in just a second that she did bring at least something that we don't know about her until now. Because she says, in verse 20, she says, don't call me Naomi. Call me Mara. The word Mara means bitter. She's saying, call me bitter. Call me bitterness. She answered, for the Almighty has made me very bitter. I went away full, but the Lord has brought me back empty. Why do you call me Naomi, since the Lord has opposed me? And the Almighty has afflicted me? Whoa, wait a minute here. Whoa, wait a minute. What's going on?
Yeah, she's more than God.
Angry then.
She's angry. She's blaming God, right? Don't you see that? God has made me bitter. One of the questions I have when I read this is Naomi really exaggerating her circumstance and her situation? I don't know. It's something that you, until you know the person, you just don't know. You know people that would tell you, they get a little hangnail, and the hangnail is for them on the pain scale is a 27, and they're screaming and bloody murder and everything else. And,
That's a man.
yeah, well, that's most men, Most men are babies. Come on, let's call it like it is. Okay, but Naomi's saying, don't call me Naomi, call me bitter, because God's made me very bitter. So, does she have an accurate view of really what's going on?
But she did it to herself. Not that she did it to herself, but it was her choice to go.
Everybody
so
has.
she's blaming him for something she decided to do.
Well, even in this, okay, maybe they decided together and they made the best decision possible, and it didn't work out the way that she thought it would. Her choice is how you respond to the circumstance. Circumstances don't define you. Everybody has them. Everybody has those things that pop up and knock them down and take their breath away. It's how you respond. It's the attitude that you carry. What attitude is Naomi carrying right now? I see a couple things in here. First, she's angry, but also she sees herself as a victim.
Well, yeah. But her husband said, we're going. And in those days, you did what they said. She could be a victim.
Yeah,
she could have said no, but that would have been very hard in those days.
Well, but either way, you see that either way it's hard. There's always a choice.
There is.
There's always.
You may not like the choice.
Yeah. It may be seemingly that it's a bad choice, but, here we're seeing that even in this, look, they went to a place that they should have never gone. They lived for a long time. They probably adopted some of the customs. Tragedy happened. Naomi's coming back to what she knows. She's in some ways returning to her faith, returning to who she is, but she's doing it with an attitude.
Marilyn writes, she was probably tired, embarrassed, and desperately sad. She lost her husband and both children. I don't blame her.
Yeah.
She quickly recovered in the later chapters.
Yeah, see, we have the difference of, because we can read the whole story,
Right.
of seeing that we know that she's going to recover. I'm trying to take this and let's be in the moment here and just think, because what's she telling these people that she hadn't been around? Have you ever been around somebody that you haven't seen for a long time, and then they look at you and go, what's different about you? And then there's those people that you know and you're close to, and then whatever reason you separate for a long time and you come back together, and it's just, man, you pick up right where you left off. Naomi's bitter, and she's got this attitude coming back into Bethlehem, to a place where really, truly, she should have been saying, I'm home. Yes, things are hard, but I'm home. Hopefully I can find some help here. See, she came back. She came back to find meaning again. She came back to find purpose. She came back to find herself and find hope. But she definitely wasn't thinking about what she had.
Well, she was left there in Moab all alone at that time. You know, I mean, she had her daughter-in-laws, but I mean, she was in a place that she was not comfortable in. She may have never been comfortable there for the whole 10 years. And then she lost her husband and both of her sons. I mean, I can understand how she would be bitter. I'm maybe not blaming God, but certainly sad. I mean,
well, now wait, there's a difference between sadness and bitterness.
well, I can understand.
I can understand.
Either one.
We grieve, we all grieve in different ways, right?
Yeah.
Who has suffered loss?
Well, we all have, but I haven't suffered loss like that. I haven't. I don't know how it could, and the circumstances were different then too, because she would, you know, I could go out and get a job and take care of myself, but you know, that was a different time, and women weren't able to do that, you know, so she was just, everything was gone. She was like wrung out, you know.
Well, maybe.
Yeah.
But if you understand the whole picture, she was going back to a place where she was going to be taken care of and safe. Why? Because we're going to talk about this in just a second. Maybe let's get to that and we'll talk about it, okay?
Did she know that she was going to be taken care of?
Had to.
Yeah, she
Had to.
Yeah,
Why?
because she had family there.
What did the Levitical law say?
Take care of women and,
Right,
She had to go marry her brother?
Well, that was part of it.
Yeah.
Not for her,
Yeah.
but what it says, it's the same thing that it says in James 1:27. You take care of widows and orphans in their distress,
Yeah.
and don't be stained by the world. The Levitical law dictated in the agrarian society that the people that were planting and growing things, that they don't harvest around the perimeter. To leave that for the poor, leave that for the widows, leave that for so that the whole community was taken care of. It's Levitical law says God cares about everybody no matter what's going on. So yes, she would have known that she was going back to a place where at least she was going to be able to get some food. Okay, so she wasn't going to be, even though things were going to be hard, she would have been able to sustain herself.
Would they have even had a dwelling to be in?
Well, that's where the family comes in.
Yeah.
And she had family there. That's where the family comes in. When somebody from the family, and you got to remember, these are communities that were given to the tribe, to the tribe of Judah, the tribe of Gad, the tribe of Reuben, so she's coming back to a place that is essentially family. Yeah, there are some outsiders there, but there's a lot of family there. So she's going to have somewhere, it may not have been the nice home that she left, but she would have had a place to put her head. She would have a way to get food. See, she's not thinking about what she had. She's not even thanking God yeah, look, I've been hit with all this stuff. But you know what? You gave me the strength and the ability to walk the 80 miles back home. She's just mad. See, and what that tells me is, yes, life is hard. We all know this. Is there anybody in here or online that doesn't think life is hard? Life is hard. We all have these situations, and we even have a choice in the circumstance, in the situation, how we're going to respond. Yeah, you see, but the other side of this too, and this is what I thought as I'm reading Naomi's complaint here, is she really in her way, and I don't know, I'm speculating here, okay? Is she admitting that, you know what, they went against God, that they sinned, and she deserved this punishment? That was a prevalent attitude back then. God's punishing me, but it's a prevalent attitude today. God's punishing me because I did wrong.
Yeah. I want to share this.
Go ahead.
Marilyn writes, think about a high school reunion. That time that passed might be too uncomfortable to talk about, maybe embarrassing as well. I think her reaction was very human. And
Yes.
since it was written in the Bible, God wants us to know that being human happens. Sarah didn't handle the lack of children very well either. I think that these are important stories to include real life experiences.
Absolutely. And that's why I think we need, so many people read this stuff and they cherry pick the highlights, and we don't talk about the real stuff. This is real. This is real. She's going back and looking for a place to kind of land, so maybe she can make some sense of whatever the remainder of the life that she has is left. You know, Dr. Laura asks a pretty prevalent question when people are complaining about their lives or whatever else and all this. And I don't know if you're a fan of Dr. Laura or not. I'm not. I don't know. I've listened to her, but there's a great question that she asks, and it's a question that I've taken in one way or another to asking people that are important to me. And the question's this: what are you going to do between now and dead? In other words, you have a choice on how you're going to live. No matter what you've done up to this point, you have a choice on how you're going to respond. This is potentially, by them returning home, it's a place where they can find hope. It's a new beginning for these two widows. That's what this is. And that means it's so real. It should be so real to us. So, okay, they've got back to Bethlehem. Okay? So, remember, Ruth is an outsider. We're going to have a very powerful encounter here, starting in chapter 2. Now Naomi had a relative on her husband's side. He was a prominent man of noble character from Elimelech's family. His name was Boaz. Boaz, do you know what that means? It means in him there is strength. So obviously their parents saw something when they named him. Okay, but he was, they say he's prominent. He was wealthy. He was probably one of the wealthiest men in town, the way that they're talking about this. So I think this is just a little background here. Ruth, the Moabitess, asked Naomi, will you let me go into the fields and gather fallen grain behind someone with whom I find favor? Wow. Is that something she would have done at home? No, I don't think so. I don't know, but I don't think so, because women didn't do that. The people that worked in the fields were primarily men. If you were a woman servant, you were working doing something else. Okay, maybe you were working at processing all the grains that were being taken. But here, Ruth knows that she and Naomi are in need. And she is putting this faith that she has not only in Naomi, but it tells me that she understands a little bit of the Levitical law. Now, the Levitical law talks about how you don't harvest around the perimeter. But it also talks deeply in Deuteronomy, in Exodus, in Leviticus, about how God cares about the poor and the widows, and how the community is supposed to care for them. That says that they're important. And one of the things it says in Exodus, it says in Deuteronomy, is you're supposed to treat them fairly. You treat them equitably. be truthful. That doesn't even happen today. It's always about taking advantage or people don't treat people, you don't treat people the way that they should be treated. James talks a lot about the sin of favoritism. He writes about that. And what it tells me and what we need to understand is God doesn't have, except for me, God doesn't have favorites. Okay? I'm on a whole nother level, guys. Now, come on.
Sometimes it seems like he does.
Yeah.
Sometimes it seems like he does.
Sure. Sure, we can all feel that way. But God says, I love you with an everlasting love. And he loves us completely. So Ruth is saying, she's putting her faith into action. She's saying, we have a need. Let me go out and see if I can find favor with somebody who I'm not going to get in their way. I'll just walk behind and pick up the scraps. Wow. Proverbs 10:14 says this, a slack hand causes poverty, but the hand of the diligent makes rich. Ruth understands something, that she's not a victim, but she's going to have to work to make sure they have. Her faith is seen in the action she takes. So is our faith. It's seen in real life. It's seen in real circumstances. And we just get to live it out. And that's the thing that we need to understand. And we need to see this example here. Naomi answered her, go ahead, my daughter. So Ruth left and entered the field to gather grain behind the harvesters. She happened, I love that, she happened to be in the portion of the field belonging to Boaz, who was from Elimelech's family. Would she have known that?
No, she probably didn't.
Not at all.
But God did.
Yeah. Oh, so what do we see? Here, wait, this lady comes back bitter to Bethlehem. This lady that's supposed to have this relationship with God, she comes back blaming God. She's angry with God. Yeah, it's part of it's justified. I get that. I'm not trying to minimize that. I'm saying she had a choice on how she was going to, you know what, when I could say I'm really hurting, I'm really grieving. It doesn't make sense. But God is still God. And I trust him. Well, God's plan is being revealed right here. She happened. What does the footnote say? I forget. It refers to the whole thing, the whole relationship. It's about relationship, the whole relationship with Jonathan and David. I remember I looked that up. Anyway, she happened to be in the portion of the field who was belonging to Boaz, to Elimelech's family. Let me read a little more, then I'm going to make a big point about this. Later, so she'd been working for a while, right? Because later, you see the movie scene, and she comes to the field, and she's working, and then it fades out, it fades back in. Later that day.
Yeah, this is study.
Yes. Later, when Boaz arrived from Bethlehem, so he had come out of town. That means Ruth had to go out of town. Okay. He said to the harvesters, the Lord be with you. The Lord bless you, they replied. What is this evidence of?
His relationship with God, how he knew the word, he knew God's law, and he's
Shows respect.
Yeah.
Yeah, respect.
Do you think it's evidence of something a little deeper?
yeah. Yeah.
Something he was raised with?
I think
His loyalty to his God.
What did Jesus tell her? What was the thing Jesus said? He said, you'll be identified by the way
You love.
you love one another. I think it's evidence of a very deep relationship with the people that worked for him, a very high degree of respect. Yes, it's a high degree of God because he's pronouncing God's blessing over them, and he's taught them so much because their response is, "God bless you too. May God bless you. May He make you happy. May He supply everything that you need." So this is an evidence of a deep and a caring and a committed relationship between a wealthy man, a master, if you will, and his workers. Okay?
True.
That's important to understand because we're going to carry that through the rest of this story. Boaz then asked his servant who was in charge of the harvesters, whose young woman is this? How would he have seen her so quick?
Because
I gave the key right there. Her.
Yeah.
Her. It was obvious there was a woman out there. Well, wait a minute. What's a woman doing in my field? But he understood, again, the law and things like that. So he wanted to know if it was part of somebody's family or whatever. It says the foreman. This was the foreman, the servant who was in charge of the house. The servant answered, "She is the young Moabite woman who returned with Naomi from the territory of Moab." She asked, so she was respectful. She didn't just go in and just start doing it.
Yeah.
They could have run her off. She asked, "Will you let me gather fallen grain among the bundles behind the harvesters?" She came and has been on her feet since early morning, except she rested a little in the shelter. So it's obvious the foreman was impressed with her work. But here's the thing. Okay, she happened into this thing. Isn't that really, I look at that and go, wow, that's just the way God works his plan, isn't it? Mm-hmm. We see, it talks about the mystery of God all through the New Testament, God's mysterious plan. God's mysterious plan isn't that mysterious if you're just looking. Mm-hmm. See, God's at work. He's at work with us. In other words, he's watching out for us. He's at work in us, make sure that we have what we need.
But he's also part of Naomi's family.
Who? Yes.
Well, yeah.
But until he didn't know who Ruth was until he got told. So he's noticed her before. And yet God's accomplished all this. God is accomplishing his plan in a desperate circumstance. Through a person who's willing to work and a person who's hurt and grieving. Okay?
But she's also showing her faithfulness to her mother-in-law, who is of that faith.
Well, now that he understands that, yeah. Again, there was something that caught his eye before that.
Her beauty.
Well, maybe.
Well, that he didn't recognize her, but it does. And it does say that he tells her to stay close to his female servants.
You're stepping ahead, and that's okay. I understand that.
Well, the other thing too, where it says that, where the foreman says that, she's been on her feet all day since early morning, and she's hardly taken a rest, which meant she's been working hard and diligently. She's not slacking off and asking other people to give her things. She's working.
Yeah.
I want to just throw out something here. Because I agree with everything you're saying, and I'm not saying anybody's saying anything wrong. Do you think that this might have been a situation or a circumstance of love at first sight?
Maybe.
Could be.
We know the story from a different perspective, but it's something to think about. Boaz saw her. He saw something different about her. He was impressed by what he saw, and he wanted to know. If he didn't care, he would have just let things go and trusted his foreman to handle the circumstance and situation. Something caught his eye.
And he said, "Whose young woman is this?" Not who is this young woman. He said, "Whose young woman is this?"
Like is she attached to
anyone? Yeah.
Well, I don't know. Again, I'm just asking the question. I think he's trying to find out some information, but it caused a response here. You've already referred to that. It caused a response. It caused a response where first, because of what he had seen and what he had heard from his foreman, Boaz took the initiative. Now remember, this is a wealthy man, and he understands that now that Ruth is associated with Naomi. He could have just went and talked to Naomi. That's the thing. That's the family connection. Okay? He could have just went to Naomi and said, "Tell me about this Moabite girl you brought back. Is she your servant?" They didn't say anything else.
He might not have been sure about, what he wants to do yet at that point. I mean,
I think
agree with you. I want to think he saw her and was Twitter painted and.
Well, but see, I'm just asking that question, and
She's been watching some.
Yeah.
That's a good question, Donnie. But she sounded like she's been beautiful.
well, it says later she was one of the most beautiful women in the city. Okay.
But her faithfulness to Naomi also was brought out in her.
Well, he sees the hard work. He knows she's associated somehow with Naomi. Doesn't know how yet. But the answer to this question, it was really interesting because it caused a response in Boaz that's not a typical response. Verse 8, then Boaz said to Ruth, whoa, stop right there. Why is this wealthy man, this master, talking to a foreigner?
Somebody who's very lowly.
Talking to somebody who is obviously poor and destitute, and a woman.
But he knew that she was there taking care of Naomi.
No, he did not.
Not
Not that time.
No, he did not. All the foreman said,
Okay.
she is a young Moabite woman who returned with Naomi from the territory of Moab. Will you let me gather fallen grain among the bundles behind the harvesters? And then she's working hard. He doesn't know the association with Naomi yet or not. He knows that she just came back with her. He knows that there's a connection. Okay?
I would assume that. I would make that leap, if
Well-
she came back with Naomi, that.
But she could have come back as a servant. She could have come back as somebody who was a slave, who had been obligated to something. So he doesn't know.
You don't think he heard the gossip chain from all the other people?
Well, it doesn't talk about that. There very well could have been talk. But again, now they're out of town. They're in the fields. They're not in Bethlehem. So he's just dealing with his people here. The point that I'm saying here is Boaz. This caused Boaz to reach out. Boaz took the initiative. Can I tell you something? This is a big time God step.
Oh, yeah.
This is a big time. This is the same thing that God does for us. It says all through the New Testament. We love because He first loved us. Okay? We have salvation. Why? Because of Him. Because of His grace. Because while we were yet sinners, Christ died for us. It says all through Romans 5 and 6 about how we're helpless, and God was the one who took the initiative so that we could come back into this relationship with Him, so we could come into righteousness. Jesus said, no man comes to the Father, no man comes back unless the Father draws him. So the Father takes the initiative. This is such a great example of what God does for us just by Boaz taking the initiative. He spoke to her. He went to her and he spoke to her. He could have just, you know what? He could have just left her and let the foreman deal with her. He says, listen, my daughter, don't get confused, my daughter. We'll talk about that in a second. Listen, my daughter, don't go and gather grain in another field. And don't leave this one, but stay here close to my female servants.
So where were the female servants working?
Well, they might have been, who knows? They might have been harvesting.
See which field they are harvesting. So
But they might have been on the periphery too, because we're going to find out that down the road, down here, that Naomi doesn't just do the harvesting, but she prepares all the stuff too, and that would be what the female servants were doing. Okay, it says down there, she pulled out the stalks, she gathered grain, and then she went to the threshing floor and beat it all out. That was more the woman's job than gathering up all the bundles and hauling it off. Okay?
He's super too.
Okay, but it says, see which field they're harvesting and follow them. Haven't I ordered the young men not to touch you? When you are thirsty, go and drink from the jars the young men have filled. Oh, this is going against all kinds of stuff.
Yeah.
So
And he's throwing the doors wide open.
Yeah.
He's basically saying, whatever you need, take it.
Yeah.
Again, this is such a God thing.
And he's trying to protect her.
Well, there it is.
Her in his field, because he knows that somebody might take advantage of her. You know.
What does God promise for us?
Take care of it.
Provision and protection, right?
Right.
Provision and protection. Don't go over here. They're gonna, somebody else is gonna take advantage of. Stay. I've already told my young men, take care of you. You're protected. You're accepted. Even though you're an outsider, even though you're a foreigner, you're protected. And here, let me make sure you have everything you need.
I didn't think it was the men's job to fill the water jars.
Obviously something different there. Maybe. Who knows? Maybe when he says young men, maybe he means the kids. Because you got to remember, everybody worked. Everybody worked. As soon as you were able to walk and carry, you worked. I don't know. There's all kinds of speculation there, but yeah, I agree. Think about this. We are undeserving of God's grace. We are really foreigners.
In a strange land. Yeah.
And yet, God has told us He will protect us. He will provide for us. God's provided for us mercy. He's provided for His grace. He's provided for His wisdom. He's provided for His knowledge. He has provided for us. He will even share His glory with us. Those aren't my words. Those are all scriptural. Those are all scriptural references. Boaz is making sure her needs were met. You know how I know? He says it here, but let's go on for just a second. When he says this about make sure you drink from the jars young men have filled, she fell face down and bowed to the ground and said to him, why have I found favor with you so that you notice me, although I'm a foreigner?
Yeah.
Tremendous expression of gratitude. Tremendous amount of respect. Now we know that Boaz has heard some of the story. Why?
Yeah.
We're going to hear right here. What you hear is this. Your actions speak. Your attitude speaks. Louder than anything else. Boaz answered her, everything you have done for your mother-in-law since your husband's death has been fully reported to me. How you left your father and mother in your native land, and how you came to a people you didn't previously know. May the Lord reward you for what you have done. And may you receive a full reward from the Lord God of Israel, under whose wings you have come for refuge. Whoa. What does that tell you? That tells me, whatever's going on in my life, I want to stay faithful. Life could be falling apart. Everything could be devastating. And I want to stay faithful to God. Because that is what people are going to see. That is what's going to speak and testify stronger than the most eloquent sermon, the most powerful thing, anything else. Boaz is...
That will define you.
Amen.
That defines you. That's what defines you, exactly. Naomi says, my Lord, she said, I have found favor with you, for you have comforted and encouraged your servant, although I am not like one of your female servants. You know what she's saying here? You've touched my heart. You've spoken to my heart. That word comfort is really, if you want to do the Hebrew translation, it means you've spoken to the heart and encouraged me. Now, Ruth's testimony, Ruth's actions spoke a great deal of her character, a great deal of her commitment, a great deal of her faith.
Yeah.
And so Boaz said, I'm going to protect you. I'm going to provide for you. Well, then he took it to a whole other level. Right? We know the story. At mealtime, now remember this, they didn't have anything. She's going out and gathering grain. Why? So she can clean out all the weeds from the grain and all the stalks and take it back, and then they could grind it up and they could make bread. That's what they did. Okay? So her work's not done, but what does Boaz say? Boaz will come over here and have some bread and dip it in the vinegar sauce. So she sat behind the harvesters, and he offered her roasted grain. The master, this shakes me up. The master is serving the lowest person there. He could have come in, he could have said, you guys do this. He is serving her. Again, it's the way God. It's the way God treats us. She ate and she was satisfied. He brought her completely into the family. He embraced her wholly.
Yeah.
He could have said, okay, you can do this. I'll let you do this. You're an outsider, but I know Naomi needs help. So go ahead and help her. But you know what? You got to stay over there. And that would have fit right in with the Israelite attitude and with culture and everything else.
Fulfilled the law.
He would have fulfilled the law. He would have been honorable. But see, I see this, and you know what I think about? What was Ruth's attitude while she was gathering grain, while she was working hard? Not just her attitude. If it was with this encounter with Boaz, she could have said, oh, she was just kind of kissing up to the boss. She was making nice so she didn't, It's her attitude had to speak throughout this whole time. They saw that she was a hard worker. They saw that she was doing all these things. He has brought her in and said, what I have is yours.
And he had already heard about everything that she had done to help Naomi.
It's what God has done for us. What I have is yours. You're right. When she got up to gather grain, Boaz ordered his young men, let her even gather grain among the bundles, and don't humiliate her. Pull out some stalks from the bundles for her, and leave them for her to gather. Don't rebuke her. So Ruth gathered grain in the field till the evening. She beat out what she had gathered, which was about 26 quarts of barley. Stop right there. You have any idea how much barley that is?
That's a lot.
That's a lot. The average harvest, the average harvester would have gathered enough for about 2 to 3 pounds. That's all that they would have gathered. She gathered enough for 2 weeks. Not just a day or two, for 2 weeks. That was a 2-week supply for them to be sure that they were going to be fed. She picked up the grain. You know what? Let me stop here. Stop there, because we're going to talk about grace next week, and this is a longer conversation than what we have in the next few minutes, because this is a total demonstration of God's grace toward us. It's attitude. It's your attitude and your actions that define you. It's not the circumstance or the situation. Naomi, at least for a minute, was letting the circumstance define her. Now you could tell she changed. You could tell very quickly she changed, because she said, yes, go do what you can for us. If she was still bitter, she would have said, I don't care. But we have this encounter, this Christ-like encounter with this wonderful man, and it's going to lead to a very, very incredible story from here on out. All right. Kind of tired. It's enough to wear you out. All that is just enough to wear you out, man.
Powerful stuff.
You got all engrossed.
Yes. This is just, to me, I read these things, I read these stories now, and I just see God speaking to us today so very clearly through the Bible. So very clearly how we can relate. Man, life isn't easy. Life is hard today.
Yeah. But do you see then where he had a hold of you in your life way back years ago? And you can really notice it and go no more now.
Well, I fought, honestly, for a long time I fought him. I was a very angry young man. Because I didn't understand, and because you guys know this, you grew up the same time I grew up. Back in the 60s, we didn't talk about family issues. We didn't talk about being abused. We didn't talk about the hurt that was going on. You know what you were told? Suck it up. Get over it.
Happens to everybody.
Get on with your life. And so for the longest time, even though I grew up in a very strong and committed and community church, and I grew up under one of the most, still to this day, one of the most incredible pastors that I've ever seen in my life. I've never seen a guy be able to teach God's Word the way Pastor Cruz taught God's Word. And how connected he was to it. And it was the one thing that inspired me more than anything else. But from the time I was probably 11 years old until I was probably well into my 30s, I was angry. I fought at the drop of a hat when I was in the service. Somebody looked cross-eyed at me, and I didn't lose many fights. And I'm not saying that to say, oh, I'm a big tough guy. But I had a lot of rage inside of me, and I had a lot of hurt inside of me, and I never turned it over to God. It took me a long time. And so, yes, I know God had a hold of my life, and I can look back on it now and say, yeah, I can see that He still protected me. But there's also a side of me that really regrets, because I knew way back then too that God had called me to something different. And it didn't take me 40 years, but it took me about 25 years to get there.
But you were learning, and He will use that for...
Well, I see that and I understand that. And I think God takes things in our lives and He will use them so that other people can learn to see God too. That we're all faced with different circumstances. And I don't know what would have been and what could have been. I don't dwell on the could haves and should haves. I just recognize now that God is speaking loudly. And if you're listening to what's going on, if you're listening to the people, the pastors that really aren't out there promoting some agenda, but out there with their pulse on what's going on, especially in this country, they're preaching that God is doing something and God is speaking, and you better be listening. And the way we listen, it starts right here. It starts right here. Because when I open this up every morning, when I open this up every evening and read, it doesn't matter what I'm reading, it relates to where we are today. So you can't tell me this isn't living and active. The stories that it tells me, this story of Ruth and Boaz and Naomi is such a story of love and compassion and grace and understanding. And that's what God is. He understands. He hasn't abandoned us. People are saying today that He's turned His back on America, that He's turning His back. He hasn't abandoned us. We're chasing Him out.
Yeah, I was just going to say
we're chasing Him out. And so there is a core group. There is a group that He's calling. And that's why these things are so important. It's not about any agenda. It's not about any anti or pro or this or that. It's about how are you going to love and honor God and glorify God in your circumstance, in your situation. And that's what these stories tell. I just finished reading the book of Romans again, and that was on my own. And I went through it, and we did, just a few months ago, we did Bible study on Romans. And I felt like I needed to go back there. And I'm just sitting there, and I think every morning as I finished my reading in Romans, it took me I went through it in about a week or 10 days, and every morning at the end of my reading, tears are just pouring down my face because it's speaking about exactly what we were facing. This story of Ruth is speaking exactly about what we are facing. There are people out there that are desperate, that are destitute, and they need to see and know God's love and God's grace. They need to know that God is passionate for them and that He's above their circumstances. That's what it's about. I'll get off my soapbox. I can go for another hour about that. Thank you for listening, and thank you, guys. I love the conversations. To me is so essential. The conversation, the comments, the insights, so important. It's so important because what it does, it takes us, we're like this, and it puts us like this. And that is a testimony of who God is. Heavenly Father, we're so grateful for your love and grace. We're so grateful for your word, that you speak to us, that you love us enough to walk with us in our hour of need and sometimes our hard times. Thank you for being there. Thank you for guiding us. Father, thank you for your hand over every circumstance. May we honor and glorify you in everything that we say and do. This we pray in your name. Amen.
Amen.